Is it true that most people get attacked by sharks in 3 feet of water? About 10 feet from the beach.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
As you may or may not know, we do have a killer animal movie that'll be coming out very, very soon, Chad, and that is Idris Elba's Beast, or The Beast, where Idris Elba is fighting and running away from lions. Now, it looks like a lot of fun. I'm hoping that it's on something of the same level as Crawl, which is one of the better modern day killer animal movies, which I saw a few years ago. I saw them in theaters, and I think it was like 2018, 2019. Very fun movie. But we don't get too many theatrically released killer animal movies. Yeah, most of the time they're like straight to VOD type films. To kind of give you a background on my appreciation for this odd little subgenre, I was raised on television, chat. The TV was like a third parent to me. And during my youth, when I was a young man, chat, I watched a lot of Sci-Fi Channel original movies on the Sci-Fi Channel. And that a big portion of that content was killer animal movies, giant animal movies, boa constrictor versus shark, like all that stuff. I watched all those giant spider movies, and even like classic ones from the the 50s and 60s and into the 70s. Chat. I mean, giant animal movies have been a part of American cinema, but also like other various countries' cinema for decades, Chad. It's just a fun concept, man versus nature, man versus like abomination version of nature. Like what's scarier than a giant, what's scarier than like a shark, a giant shark or a giant crocodile or a giant snake. Like there's just something about that we find, I think, fun and scary and thrilling and interesting. And so I always had like a bit of a soft spot for the killer animal movies and giant animal movies, just because a lot of them are very goofy, but thankfully most of them are also a little tongue-in-cheek. And that works for most of them. And so I have a number of killer animal movies that I'm fond of. I wouldn't say all of these movies are great. Hell, I would even say a lot of these movies are good. And in some cases, certainly for maybe the first several I'll talk about, it's the kind of thing where they're so bad that they're good. They're really fun to laugh at. And I think one of those films, to start with my list off, Chad, going over my top 10 favorite killer animal movies, the one that kind of encompasses it's so bad or it's so goofy that it is good. That film being Lake Placid, chat, which the whole concept is a giant saltwater crocodile ends up in Maine. It was fed by Betty White for years upon years. And now it's gotten even hungrier, and it starts feeding on all the visitor inhabitants of this small town. This film has, as I always said, a great cast. Obviously, Betty White in just a really funny role where she's actively cheering on the crocodile in the movie to eat all of our heroes in the film. Our heroes being Bill Pullman, Bridget Fonda, where this was, I think, one of the last films that she did, I want to say. And Oliver Platt and Brendan Gleeson, along with a few other recognizable character actors as well. The thing is, not all the humor always works, but there's a good portion that does. It's more like, 60-40. And there are some very dated aspects to that film, like the shit that they kind of put Bridget Fonda for. It's kind of a little bit of a sexist movie where she's like, well, she's a woman and she struggles with everyday tasks. And it's like, okay, it's that kind of thing where it's so dated you kind of have to laugh at it. But, she does get a one-up on some of the boys throughout the film. But she is, for a lot of the movie, a pushover. However, despite that, I kind of define this movie. It's the very definition of a guilty pleasure, and one of the more fun giant animal movies of the 1990s. And one of the those last big killer animal movies that was kind of released in the theaters, where before they were most of the time relegated to VOD and DVD and straight to television films. Moving on from Lake Placid, chat. Oh, we gotta talk about the giant shark movie, not the one that you think, chat, but no. There are a number of killer shark movies, giant shark movies. But there's one that, again, much like Lake Placid, which is a bit of a guilty pleasure for me, but one I have a great appreciation for, and that is Deep Blue Sea, deepest, bluest, hat like a shark's fin, chat. Then again, came out I think around the same time. Came out the same year as Lake Placid. That was the year of the dueling killer animal movies, where this one was more commercially successful than Lake Placid, chat. Again, has a fucking all-star cast of characters, of actors, to Thomas Jane, Samuel L. Jackson, Michael Rappaport, LL Cool J, who survives. He's one of the few black people to make it to the end of a horror film, chat. That's pretty goddamn impressive. So it's so funny because the history, the whole idea of this movie is that you have it where you have this secret marine facility in the middle of the ocean where Samuel L. Jackson is like a major contributor to. You have these scientists. We also have a very young Stellan Skarsgård in the movie as well. He plays one of the scientists. But they are trying to find a cure for Alzheimer's, and they're experimenting on sharks, like brains. And so, like, they've made these super intelligent sharks in order to extract some Alzheimer juice to then put into people to make them better from Alzheimer's. It's stupid, but it's fun. It's fun. So you have basically sharks that have the same intelligence or nearly the same intelligence as people, as they're, as these things go wrong, as the sharks start, causing chaos, causes the marine facility to become completely uninhabitable and partially destroyed. And it's also an escape movie as it's slowly sinking into the ocean. They got to avoid the sharks. I mean, you have some iconic scenes, Chad, in this film. Of course, famously, you have one of the greatest death scenes of the 1990s where Samuel L. Jackson is like, no, we aren't going to die down here, motherfuckers. All right, we're going to do what we can, and we're going to go up there, and we're going to kick someone. And he immediately gets eaten by a giant CGI shark and then dragged underwater. It's hilarious. How can you not laugh at it, chat? No, this is fun. Another fun part of the movie is that when it was originally sent out for test screenings, audiences were upset that the main scientist lady, who is the reason for all this shit happening, survives with Thomas Jane, and LL Cool J dies. And so what they did was they went back and they did reshoots, and they had it where she dies and sacrifices herself, and LL Cool J, he survives the movie alongside Thomas Jane, making him one of the few people, one of the few black people not to perform a blackrifice at the end of a horror film. And you gotta appreciate it for that. That's a little cool, fun fact, a little bit of history, chat. Now, again, talking about giant animal movies, talking about cast of characters who are goofy, actors who you would never expect to be in a killer animal film. But, one of the greatest representatives of that has to be 1997. Again, chat, the 90s were full of just these B giant animal movies, and that is 1997's Anaconda. Has an all-star cast: Jennifer Lopez, Ice Cube, Eric Stoltz, Owen Wilson, and the horribly miscast Jon Voight as this. I don't know what he is. Is he Argentinian? Like, clearly Jon Voight, who is the snake hunter, is supposed to be a Latino man, and he is anything but that accent of his, that accent makes the movie, like, the movie itself is, it's fine for the most part. It's okay. It's like, okay, it started, it's like, we're going to go down the Amazon. We're here to, do a nature documentary. I get it, for like the BBC, fine. But when Jon Voight enters the picture, then that movie becomes so much better, because the crazy shit that comes out of his mouth, the reactions that he has, the look that he's like, what's wrong with you? It's hilarious. Like Eric Stoltz. Eric Stoltz, almost was, Marty in Back to the Future. He's been in a number of films. Like, he leaves the movie in, like, the first act. He got stung by a fucking water wasp, and he's been out for most of the film. And so most of the time, you're just following, Jonathan Hyde in the movie, too. You're just following Jon Voight as he's just acting weird and very rapey around Jennifer Lopez. It's a good time, shit. How can you not love it? You get to see Jon Voight be crushed and then vored by a giant snake, and then vomited by a giant snake, and still be alive and wink at Jennifer Lopez. Hilarious. Also, yes, this was during the time where anytime Jennifer Lopez was in a movie, they would always have the camera right on her ass, and there's an famous, whatever word you want to use, chat, scene where they show off her big old booty. And God bless him for it, chat. That's all I have to say. But yeah, Anaconda, So bad, it's a good movie. And the thing is, too, like, Jennifer Lopez and, like, Ice Cube, they're not even bad in the film. I think they're fine. They do a good job. Everyone else, I think, is okay. It's just that John Voight is just so weird in the film. That you can't help but laugh at it. It works. Moving on from kind of movies that I think are just so bad that they're good. I want to bring up an often forgotten killer animal and giant animal movie, and that is the Australian natural horror film Razorback. Where you think, what are you talking about? You're doing a horror movie about a giant pig, a giant boar. Let me tell you, pigs are fucking scary, chap. Back in 1999, all right, 8-year-old Chris Herman went to the Erie County Fair. It was later renamed America's Fair, but then they renamed it Erie County Fair when I had left, chat. I remember it as the Erie County Fair. All right, they had a whole section dedicated to pigs and like how fat the pigs are and like a pig show, how pretty the pigs are. It's basically like Charlotte's Web with Wilbur and shit at the end of the movie. It's just like that, chat. And I remember seeing these giant pigs and like, oh, that's kind of cool. The thing is, though, these things are fucking strong and they're so fat. They got a lot of bulk to them. They can move fast, chat. I remember, I never talked about this, chat, but when I was an 8-year-old kid, I was charged by a pig before. And it is one of the most terrifying things imaginable because this thing is huge and it's just fat and muscle and all bulk, and boom, it hit my hip so goddamn hard that I actually flew. I flew over the railing, shit, and they had to wrangle this guy. They had to get like 3 or 4 guys to wrangle this guy. And I didn't do nothing. I didn't do anything. I was fine, though. I was fine. I didn't cry. I was just kind of in shock. I was like, oh my God. And so I've always kind of had a weird fear of pigs, Chad, and so I like to eat them. I like to eat pork. I like to eat bacon, all that shit. It's good stuff. And so I knew when I eventually saw the Australian horror film Razorback that this is nothing to laugh at, Chad. The whole premise is you basically, they describe this movie as land jaws. Land jaws, except instead of a shark, it's a giant boar, which boars, by the way, very dangerous. They're native to Texas. They're in a lot of areas also in Australia. You have these giant boars that have been known to kill humans. They eat both flora and fauna, Chad. They eat plants and they eat meat. And they've been known to attack and eat humans as well. And they have these giant fucking tusks and teeth that they use to gore you and disembowel you, Chad. This one doesn't need to do that. It just needs to nom on you and that's it. But like even how this movie opens up, it's a great fucking open. First of all, Australia is horrifying enough. It's basically Skull Island, chat. It is the closest equivalent to the fantastical home of King Kong that we got on planet Earth. You got giant spiders and saltwater crocodiles. You got kangaroo who are just fucking jacked. It's horrifying. Thank you, Cocoa, for the Wonder Biddies, and welcome to stream. And so they're also home to giant boars, chat. In this movie, it's like, well, what if we just had a giant boar that was just ravaging the various denizens of the outback? Like, this movie has a fucking horrifying opening where it's about this grandfather who's trying to protect his family from this giant boar, and they're all eaten and slaughtered. Like, the little baby in the beginning of the film, this little toddler is just, he's smushed by the gore's tusks and teeth and is carried off into the hot Australian night, wailing in pain as this thing rips him apart. It's great. I highly recommend it, chat. Razorback is a super underrated killer animal movie that not a lot of people know about. And they laugh because they think pigs aren't scary, and they aren't scary, chat. Chris in 1998 knew that, little 8-year-old Chris. Moving on to, listen. Some of the films I already talked about, they have their fair share of humor. This is the one where I can definitely say, other than maybe Lake Placid, which is a horror comedy, morely on the horror side, but definitely has a lot of comedic sensibilities. This one is straight up a horror comedy, and that is 1990s Arachnophobia, which is, again, like a lot of these killer animal movies have become kind of cult classics. Directed by Frank Marshall. Stars Jeff Daniels and John Goodman in lead roles. The whole idea is you have Jeff Daniels, who moves from San Francisco, kind of wants to get away from the big city with his family, and they move to this small California town. The thing is, though, the town and this guy's house is basically ground zero for this aggressive and very dangerous crossbreed of poisonous spider, chat. And eventually you have members of the town that are suddenly dying for no inexplicable reason, but they're all being bitten by this thing. And I love how this movie ends, where Jeff Daniels literally having a duel with this. I mean, it's a big spider. It's not exactly huge, but this thing apparently has been crossbreeding. Like John Goodman, who's in a great role, underrated role. He's studying spiders and insects all of his life, and he basically says, "Oh, you don't understand. Like this fucking spider, these spiders have been crossbreeding with each other for decades, and apparently the spiders are so inbred that they've become super powered, and now they want to spread and proliferate across the world. And Jeff Daniels' small coastal California town is just ground zero for this. But before those spiders go and proliferate across the world, they need to fight Jeff Daniels in a very comedic battle. It's a fun movie. I recommend it, Chad. Bit of a minor hit when it originally came out. See, I know the scene with, and there's some great stuff with like all the stunt spiders, or like how they use the spiders, how they're crawling out of different things. It's pretty fun. It's pretty cool. Now, again, if you have a fear of spiders, if you have arachnophobia, this movie might not be for you. But I recommend it if you want a killer animal movie that's a little more comedic in tone. And also, it's one of John Goodman's best supporting roles in his career. It's a good time. It's a good time. And then moving on, chat, we're now in my top 5. These are the films where I'm like, okay, these I think are truly great. There's a lot to them. They're kind of blending different genres, chat, and they really stand the test of time. To me, they're not really all that dated. Like some of the other ones I've already talked about, they're a little dated. There's goofy effects, goofy characters. These are ones I'm like, these are pretty good, or I feel like they're just super underappreciated. And one that I don't feel like a lot of people talk about, and it's my favorite killer bear movie, and that is 1997's The Edge. Which is written by David Mamet, and it stars Anthony Hopkins and Alec Baldwin. Now, the whole concept, the whole premise of the movie is really interesting, where it follows Anthony Hopkins, who is this, very wealthy, elderly socialite, and he's married to this much younger woman. And this woman is having an affair with Alec Baldwin. And Anthony Hopkins' wife is planning, along with Alec Baldwin, to kill Anthony Hopkins on this trip. And what happens is, while this trip is going on, their plane crashes, basically stranding Anthony Hopkins and Alec Baldwin in the wilderness, where they then are being, in the Alaska wilderness specifically, and where they have to survive while also being stalked by this man-eating giant Kodiak bear. And like the whole thing is, it's like, okay, shit, you realize like what's going on, but when will Anthony Hopkins find out? Is Alec Baldwin actually going to be killing Anthony later on in the movie? It's really good. I like it because it's just incorporating like a lot of different like genres. It's a murder. It's a thriller. It's a romance film. It's a survival movie. But it also has one of my just favorite lines in like a killer animal movie, where Anthony Hopkins is like, "What are we gonna do?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know. What are we gonna do? We're gonna kill that motherfucker. We're gonna kill that motherfucking bear." I just like his accent, his cadence in the movie is awesome to me. We're gonna kill the motherfucker. Great film. Highly recommend if you've not seen it, Chad. The best of the killer bear movies. Another great killer animal movie. And, I love movies that kind of take place in, like, one central location. I love bottle films, chat. And one of the best bottle films, certainly one of Stephen King's best kind of, like, bottle films is Cujo, which came out in 1983. It's a very simple concept, chat. You have a St. Bernard that has gone rabid after being bit by a bat and is killing people that have basically come to its home. And you follow this mother and son who have locked themselves in this car and are trying to survive. Also dealing with the elements as well. It's very short. It has a limited budget, but it also kind of hits closer to home because I've seen Saint Bernard shit. We've all had dogs. We always hear about like dog attacks, and we're always thinking like, oh shit, like you never know. Like yes, dogs are man's best friend. We love them. We love to cuddle with them and all that. But, what happens when your dog, especially if it's a big dog, like goes rabid? Can you defend yourself against that dog? We never tend to think about that. And so it took something that is very close to home to us and just completely throwing us all for a loop and making, man's best friend kind of terrifying and horrifying. And like, how would you survive? Evil Beethoven. He's basically evil Beethoven. And it works. It works very well. It's a great movie, and one of the best Stephen King adaptations. And now we kind of get to I think in my opinion, the best modern day killer animal movie, at least that the best one we've gotten in quite some time, and that is 2019's Crawl, chap, starring Kea. I'm hoping I'm getting her name correctly. Kea Scodelario and Barry Pepper, who pops up in a few things. Again, I love how this starts. It follows this woman who is this former professional swimmer, Olympic athlete. She goes to check on her father, who lives in Florida and is currently in the middle of like a Category 5 hurricane. He hasn't reported to the hurricane shelter. She goes in to check on him, chat, and she goes in the basement because he's usually working on stuff because of various sea damage. And holy shit, the entire basement is filled with man-eating alligators, shit. So not only are you dealing with the elements of Florida, which is horrifying enough, chat, but now you're also dealing with all these man-eating gators who are also breeding and fucking down here and have various nets. There's a lot of great kills in this movie. There's a lot of really cool sequences, chat. Nice combination of both CGI effects and practical effects. Like, these gators rip people apart, and it's great. And some of these people that you like, some people are just like, they're just curious and just trying to check on everybody, and they get nommed on. Really, really good movie. And definitely, I feel like the best modern-day killer animal film we've got in quite some time. But now, chat, moving on to the top two. My second favorite killer animal movie of all time. It's one that actually I'll be talking about very, very soon. And that is The Ghost in the Darkness, chat, which is the 1996 American historical adventure film. And this stars Val Kilmer and Michael Douglas. It is a period piece, which is actually based on a true story. It's an adaptation. It's a fictionalized account of the Tsavo man-eating lions, which is a pair of lions that terrorized this community while they were building the Uganda-Mombasa Railway in East Africa in the 1890s. Allegedly, they killed dozens upon, I think it's estimated between 40 and 50 people. This is a more fictitious adaptation of those events, and where you have Val Kilmer, who is going down there to monitor the railway situation, make sure it's built, also protecting the workers. He's unable to, and he enlists Michael Douglas to also help, where, he is a tracker, he's a hunter, but they discovered that these lions are unnatural, and they're specifically targeting people both to eat and just kill for sport, which lions most often do not do that. It's against their nature. The movie was it had a mixed critical success, and it had very poor box office performance. I think it made only under 100 million, like 75 million based on like a $55 million budget. It has since gone, it was nominated for a couple of Academy Awards in technical categories, but it's since gone on to be a cult film, and one that I actually highly recommend checking out if you've not done so. Especially, and it's so appropriate, chat, with Idris Elba's Beast coming out, which kind of has a similar concept of a man-eating lion preying upon a family. But it's really good. And then probably my favorite one to this day, chat, it comes at no surprise. But that is the 1975 killer animal film directed by Steven Spielberg, known as Jaws. I've talked about this movie recently, did an audio-video commentary for it, chat. This is one of the most important films ever made. It changed cinema as we know it. This is the inciting point where we had the inception of the modern-day cinematic blockbuster, chat. We wouldn't have films like Star Wars or more recent things like Avengers Endgame or Top Gun Maverick without this movie. It's based on the original 1974 novel written by Peter Benchley, and it follows this character of Sheriff Brody, who has taken his family from New York City to live in this small New England coastal town. He learns that there have been these shark attacks that have been happening, goes to shut down the beaches, dealing with the bureaucracy of the town who do not want to shut it down, but these shark attacks increase, and they realize they're dealing with a very dangerous predator, an unnatural predator, and he enlists the help of this marine biologist played by Richard Dreyfuss and this professional shark hunter played by Robert Shaw. One of his last performances, Robert Shaw is one of his last performances. The history of this movie is fascinating. Spielberg and so many other filmmakers are working on this movie. They thought it was going to be a complete mess. It was going to end their careers. Famously, the shark, which they nicknamed Bruce, animatronic, did not work, and so they had to shoot scenes without the shark, which actually made it even more thrilling, Chad. Yes, we get to the end of the movie and we see more of the shark, but some of the best sequences in this film are when we don't see it. Like if I were to rank like some of the greatest openings of all time, I'd do like a list of the top 10 greatest openings of film. I think Jaws is in there. Where you follow this teenage girl who is just getting high and drunk on this beach and is fooling around. She goes in the open water and it's at night and she's being pulled and dragged around the water, begging for help, begging to God to help her. And just that's some incredibly impressive acting in that scene. And then we see the aftermath, and there's like that's the other thing about it. Like, yes, it's a summer blockbuster, but it's a summer blockbuster that has great dialogue and character development and brings in like real world history, like the original like 1940s sinking of the Indianapolis during World War II, which is kind of like where Robert Shaw's character is connected to of Quint, where you learn he has PTSD in the movie and he's fucking crazy. And it's because of this, where he saw like hundreds of his friends and comrades be eaten alive by sharks. It brings a lot of that in there, and it's just such a great goddamn movie. And having rewatched it and recently, it just makes me appreciate it all the more. But yeah, if I were to say like what is the best what is the best killer animal movie of all time, it's hard to beat Jaws, Chad. It really is hard to beat Jaws. Thanks because of its incredible directing, its writing, and its acting. It's a cinematic achievement. But those are my favorite killer animal movies of all time. So just going from top to bottom again, all these movies I would recommend seeing, Chad. Number 10, Lake Placid. Number 9, Deep Blue Sea. Number 8, Anaconda. Number 7, Razorback. Number 6, Arachnophobia. Number 5, The Edge. Number 4, Cujo. Number 3, Crawl. Number 2, The Ghost in the Darkness. And at number 1, chat, Jaws. But what about you guys? What are your favorite killer animal movies or giant animal movies, chat? I'm very, very curious. Let me know.